Welcome, everyone, to the 7th episode of the 3rd season of the Bracket Report, a production of Delphi Bracketology. We're sponsored by Coca-Cola Bottling of Kokomo. I'm your host, Brian Tonsoni. Joining me today are senior Cade Nelson and junior Caden Gasser. If you're interested, please follow our work on our website, delphibracketology.com, and join us on Twitter. The handle is @DelphiBrackets. We're getting real close to Selection Sunday. A lot of basketball is being played. A lot of brackets are being discussed, but we're going to start out with our Indiana report. Cade, talk about the Purdue Boilermakers, please.
Yeah, so before I start my rant on whether I think Purdue should be a two-seeder, if they should drop or not, I will say that they are still solidly on the one-seed line. Even though they lost their last 3 on the road, they're still 9-4 in quad 1, and they're 5th ranked in the net. So having that ability to win the quad 1 and quad 2 games combined, I think they have 14 now it is, and having that 5th ranked net, they're still pretty solid on the one seed line. They also just picked up a recent win over Ohio State, in which they blew them out 82-55. So, you know, I think for me that they're on, and for us, they're on the one seed line. But the thing to watch for Purdue is that when it comes to their play in the tournament, I'm scared to see them play a Big 12 school or an SEC school that has a lot of firepower, just showing that they can't really win away from Mackey. And I feel like they rely on that a lot.
Current 1 seed. The Indiana Hoosiers were split 2 games. They lost a tough game at Northwestern on a buzzer beater. They came back and beat Illinois at home. And so they've kind of held serve. They were a surprise team in the NCAA reveal, which we'll talk about here coming up. But they're currently on our 4 seed line and have a big game tonight against Michigan State on the road, and then they go on the road to Purdue. So this is a real tough week for the Indiana Hoosiers. Caden, we got a couple of other teams that are playing really well from the state of Indiana.
Yeah, we got Indiana State, 29 right now. They're in the Missouri Valley Conference. Last game they beat Illinois State, extending their 6-game winning streak into a 7-game winning streak. Ball State, 19-8. They're 4th in the Mid-American Conference. Last game they lost to Western Michigan while they're on a 6-game winning streak.
Indiana State will start their conference tourney next week. And they'll probably need to win that to get into the tournament. So every week we talk about teams that are moving up and teams that are moving down. Cade, which team is on the rise?
For me, the team on the rise is Kentucky. They just picked up a really nice win at home against Tennessee, and then they won on the road against Mississippi State. So that improved their quad 1 record to 4-7. And they also improved in quads 1 and 2. That record combined, they're now positive at 9-8. And, you know, last week in a lot of brackets, they were out of the tournament. And now after beating 11-net Tennessee, it just makes their resume look 10 times better. And I think this win keeps them pretty solidly in the bracket. I'm not sure if, you know, with their 30 net or in the 30s net, I don't know if you can drop them out, especially after having that very solid win. I think it's just a matter of where they fall in the 8, 9, maybe 10 seed range.
Yeah, Kentucky's looking good. Caden, who do you have moving up?
I have Northwestern. They're on a 5-game winning streak right now. 4 of those 5 games were against the field, and 2 big games were against Purdue and IU. Boo Buie, their starting point guard, in the last 5 games has averaged 20.4 points, which is 5 points greater than his season average right now.
So Northwestern, definitely a team to watch. For me, moving up is Texas A&M. They've won 5 games in a row. Coach Buzz Williams was pretty angry last year when they didn't make the tournament, thought the selection was all rigged. They got off to a horrible start. Their non-conference record is not very good. That's going to hold them back. They're somewhere in the 8, 9 seed range with some opportunities to continue to move up. But you win 5 in a row in the SEC, you're going to catch the eyes of bracketologists. But we also have some teams moving down. We'll go to Caden, you first. What team is moving down for you?
I have Auburn, actually. Auburn just lost to Vanderbilt, putting their record worse than any team on the 10 seed line, and they're at 9 seed right now. I think they're at 9 seed or 10 seed. And they're 8-9 in quad 1 and 2, which is not amazing. Most teams are above 50 or above 50 in the bracket for quad 1 and 2.
Yeah, Auburn we have as a 10 seed. I think 9 or 10 seed right now. They got a lot of work to do. Who's your team falling down, Cade?
My team falling down this week is Oregon. They lost their last 3 to Washington, Washington State, and UCLA. So all these games were really close. I think their greatest margin of loss was like 3 points. So it just comes down, though, for Oregon to not being able to come out on top of these games. Being as low as they are, losing to both Washington and Washington State on the road especially hurts them because they needed a couple solid road wins and just solid wins in general to boost them up. So in comparison, teams like Kentucky are able to win the big games and take advantage of opportunities that they have. So that kind of separates themselves from a team like Oregon that loses a couple opportunities on the road that would have definitely helped them to advance into the bracket. But I think, they don't have a lot of games left to really boost their resume. So it comes down to, for Oregon, winning their conference championship.
And for me, it's going to be Missouri moving down. 51 net. They've lost 3 of their last 5 games, despite beating number 11 Tennessee, who is the 3 net. They're ranked 11th. I think we said 11 net earlier. Yeah. They had a nice win again at Tennessee, which will keep them in the bracket for right now. But, boy, they've got to win. And they only have one really good opportunity. That's at home tonight against Mississippi State. They to Georgia, to LSU, and Ole Miss. They should win those games, but those don't do much for the resume. So the NCAA committee revealed its top 16 on Saturday. When we return, we'll share those rankings and some of the lessons that we learned. So stay with us.
Many communities in rural America are often overlooked as underserved. These communities are being left behind due to lack of internet and access to state-of-the-art technology. That's why Mulberry Telecommunications provides rural broadband services and technology and is growing their presence in north central Indiana. Because every community deserves infrastructure and beyond. To learn more, contact us today.
Ball here. Harris scores. With 19 seconds left. Same players, big boy. I'm telling you right now, that's awesome. I love it. Has to finish. You get a layup to take it. And an and one. Fly ball. Out of here.
Welcome back to the Bracket Report. I'm Brian Tonsoni along with Cade Nelson and Caden Gasser. And on Saturday, the NCAA committee revealed its top 16 seeds and placed them in the 4 different brackets. And that's always good for transparency. We bracketologists try to learn what this committee values. And I think, boy, that's up in the air. We'll talk about that a little bit after we share the NCAA committee's top seeds. So in the South region, your seed number 1 is Alabama. Seed number 2 is Baylor. Seed number 3 is Virginia. And seed number 4 is Indiana. In the Midwest, it is Houston, number 1, Texas, number 2, Tennessee, number 3, and Xavier, number 4. In the West region, it was Kansas, number 1, Arizona, 2, Kansas State, 3, and Gonzaga, 4. And in the East region, it was number 1, Purdue, number 2, UCLA, number 3, Iowa State, and number 4, Marquette. So those were the top 16. There was some discussion where they met Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So IU losing Wednesday, Purdue losing Thursday may or may not have been reflected in what they reported out on Saturday. But nonetheless, that does give us credit. We had 15 of the 16 teams in the 4 seeds in our Friday bracket. We missed on Indiana. We had them the first 5 seed, and the committee put them up to a 4 seed. So, Cade, what surprised you about that reveal on Saturday?
Yeah, the thing that surprised me, and you kind of just mentioned it a second ago, was Indiana. I feel like they've kind of just flew under the radar all year. They did beat Purdue, which was a very solid win, so I think that was one of the main factors in them moving up to the 4 seed line. But other than that, nothing really big surprised me. I guess it was just more of a relief for me to see some final results from the committee and just kind of understand more, what they're thinking this year and maybe a little bit of an insight into what will be valued this year.
Yeah, we'll talk about Indiana a little bit coming up here, but that surprised me. They were all the way up to 13th overall, which was the top 4 seed. Caden, your thoughts on the reveal Saturday?
I looked at it and I was surprised by Connecticut not even making it. The cut over Xavier or Gonzaga. They're tying with the most quad 1 wins in the entire 4-seed line, and they only have really one bad loss in quad 3.
Yeah, Connecticut has an 8 net with 6 quad 1 wins. And again, that's current quad 1 wins. So what they looked at Wednesday in their meeting might have been a little different. But Connecticut was definitely a team that we thought was on the 4th seed line going in. We had Connecticut on that 4th seed line in replace of Indiana. But they did mention that Connecticut, Creighton, St. Mary's, and Miami of Florida were also considered for the 4th seed line. And so we put those on our 5. So we kind of know what the committee is thinking is the top 20 teams in the NCAA bracketing. That'll change as games are played and wins and losses are accumulated. That will change. But here's our takeaways from that. We always try to learn something. Number one, we believe wins matter. Quads 1 and 2 combined is something that we're going to look at, and that puts you into a bunch, and then we compare each team in that bunch of wins. If you look at the quad 1 and seed lines 1 and 2, they all have double-digit wins when you combine quad 1 and 2. We do think the net matters. It's not like 13 is always going to be ahead of 14, but it's in a range. If you're 13 to 18, somebody asked about Creighton and Indiana. That's in a very similar range, and that puts you in a range of a 4 seed, 5 seed, and then you move from there. The shocking one was Connecticut at an 8, falling all the way down to the 5 seed. So we're going to look at the net. We think teams like Michigan State and Iowa at 40 with a lot of quad 1 wins are going to be on that 8-9 seed line as opposed maybe to the 6 or 7 seed line. So wins get you in, net puts you in a certain range, and then we kind of look at all the other metrics of losses, road record, non-conference strength of schedule as those tiebreakers that moving up. So Indiana was the 13th seed. They have no losses outside of quad 1. Everyone else into consideration had losses in quad 1. Marquette had a quad 3, so did Gonzaga, so did Xavier, so did UConn, so did Creighton. So if everything was really close, maybe the committee thought, Indiana hasn't lost. Their toughest loss is to Northwestern at home, and we see that Northwestern is climbing. So I think those are the kinds of things that the committee looks at. Indiana's also played most of their games in quad 1 and 2, which is their toughest competition. So Indiana surprised me, but I can see where Indiana had moved up a little bit. Guys, let's go down a little bit to our discussion about Illinois, Maryland, Duke, and Providence we had online last night at the 6 and 7 seed lines. We spent an hour trying to compare these 5 teams, and we started at the bottom and moved up. And Providence, Duke, Maryland, Illinois were under consideration for the last 6 and 7 seed lines. So, Cade, share with everyone a little bit about those our 6 and 7 seed line discussion yesterday.
Yeah, so the thing we kind of really mentioned was just the way that, we can look at how the quad 1 and quad 2 wins matter, but it's also, having to balance out the way the net affects these teams. Providence's net is at 38, and so that's, along with Northwestern at 39, that's not really what you want to see, especially when, they're not having the greatest amount of wins on the road and even in quad 1. But it was just for us a matter of trying to compare what everyone thinks and what everyone's main tiebreaker is to the 2 biggest factors that the committee sees, which is those quad 1 and 2 wins and the net.
So we have a bunch of teams in Northwestern Maryland, Illinois, Providence, and Duke all lumped together, and they're very, very tight. Some have quad 1 wins that are higher than others. Some have some quad losses in quad 2 and 3 that you have to consider. Caden, of those teams we ended up making a lot of movement. So if you look at our bracket tonight, this isn't the order that we have on the script. It has been changed through 2 meetings. But what do you see here in this block of teams that really sticks out to you?
As I said earlier, Northwestern, when I was talking about them moving up, Northwestern was moving up, and we moved them up when we talked earlier this morning and last night. Their wins are just getting better and better, and I don't think they really have the chance to go back down the slope right now.
Northwestern's quality of wins tied with 7 quad 1 wins. We do think wins matter, but we want to be careful not to overvalue that 7 on the Northwestern line. So I do think 6 seed is fair. What a lot of people are talking about, they beat Purdue, they beat Indiana twice. They should be up at the 5 seed line. I think the net kind of drags them down a little bit. And then we move Illinois up. We ended up with Illinois, Maryland in that order. So we flip-flopped Illinois and Maryland, and then Illinois does not play well last night against Minnesota. They win, but their net drops to 32. So this is what we mean why this area is going to be constantly in flux. As I look back at it now, maybe we reflip Maryland and Illinois. Duke gets a win, and they now are 20 and 8. They lack a little bit of quality wins, and that's why they're still at the 7 seed line. And then we have on this 6 and 7 seed line, the toughest thing to guess is going to be what to do with Florida Atlantic. They don't play the schedule. They don't have strength of schedule. History has shown that they're either going to be a 7 or an 8. Small schools that win conferences are either going to be a 7 or an 8, and we're not quite sure on that. So let's look at Cade. I'm going to go back to Providence. Providence is 20 and 7, the best record of all of the teams on our 6 and 7 seed line. Why are they not higher than an Illinois or a Maryland who has 9 losses on their record?
Well, to me, looking at it now, I would say it's between their net at 38 and their non-conference strength of schedule at 272. I also don't think that they have the very nice quality of wins in quad 1. So, Illinois has those 2 really nice wins in quad 1 that keeps them up. But they also have 6 wins in quads 1 and 2 combined. So that is one of the lower numbers out of this 6 and 7 seed range. So I think when you compare that to, not really playing the toughest non-conference schedule and having a 38 net, I think those 2 numbers are what really hurts Providence, when in past years seeing 4 and 5 in quad 1 and 5 and 5 on the road might have helped them.
So one of the toughest things, like we had Illinois at the last 6 seed line. They have 9 losses. But, man, they have 2 great wins. They've won at the number 4 net, UCLA, a neutral, and they beat Texas on a neutral site, who is number 9. They only have 3 quad 1 wins, but 2 of them are fantastic. How do we compare that to, teams that have, Providence has wins against Connecticut and teams that are good as well? That gets to be real tricky in our job. But we thought those 2 wins – solidified yesterday that Illinois be on the 6 seed line and Maryland and Providence, and that be on, the 7 line. And then we drive down and we talked, in 2019, we messed up TCU because they had 2 nice wins. And then we were talking about Kentucky has 2 nice wins. We got to really be careful about getting enamored with a couple of nice wins versus other metrics. And that's the job that keeps us in business. Right now there's a lot of people that are not very happy with the committee and so forth. But we are, because if you don't know what the committee's doing, you're going to tune in to ISC Sports Network and try to get some clarification. If it was a scoreboard, you just look at the standings on ESPN and know exactly where it was. So we kind of live for the confusion. So there's a lot of important games. After we come back, we'll talk about where the Big Ten team stands, and we'll talk about the bubble and always games to watch. So stick with us.
For the ultimate Wi-Fi experience, you need a managed Wi-Fi service with advanced Blast Wi-Fi. Blast Wi-Fi systems provide ultimate coverage, ultimate performance, and ultimate power all the time. Available from Mulberry Telecommunications, Blast Wi-Fi systems feature the latest Wi-Fi 6 technology and are equipped with unrivaled bandwidth and 4 times more simultaneous connections, so you can connect tons of devices throughout your home with no lag and no downtime. Plus, with 24/7 support and remote troubleshooting, you can rest assured that Mulberry Telecommunications is always here to help you should any issues arise. It's the ultimate Wi-Fi experience, and it's a blast. Blast Wi-Fi is now included with Mulberry Telecommunications fiber internet packages. Contact Mulberry Telecommunications at 296-2885 today to get started.
Throw it up for Tillman. Whoa, my goodness. 22-6-0 for Penn.
What a swim! Six of them.
We're watching the Bracket Report, a production of Delphi Bracketology, sponsored by Coca-Cola Bottling of Kokomo. It's now time for our Big Ten talk, and here are the Big Ten seeds. Currently, Purdue is at the 1 seed line. Indiana is a 4. Northwestern is a 6. Those are pretty definite places. Then you get into a lot of question marks in the Big Ten. Illinois and Maryland are either a 6 or a 7 for us right now. Iowa, Michigan State is, man, they could be a 7, 8, or 9. We have them, I think, on the 8 or 9 seed coming out tonight. Rutgers is in that same area, 7, 8, 9. Depending on what happens down the stretch. Wisconsin is in our bracket. They are in our last 4 in, barely hanging on. They lost to Rutgers this week, but we do think they have a volume of wins that will matter. Penn State is making a late move, and Michigan is making a late move, so keep your eye on those teams. So now it's time for some bubble talk, and here are our last 4 teams in. We have Oklahoma State, got trounced last night, and they moved down into this spot. New Mexico, USC, and Wisconsin. West Virginia was out until last night and then moved into the 11 seed line. Boise State is also on our 11 seed line. So those are the last 6 teams that are in our bracket. Caden, what team you want to talk about there? Your Wisconsin Badgers?
Yeah, I kind of want to talk about my Badgers. I'm looking at Wisconsin, and yes, they have a lot of losses, but those losses are against great teams. If you look at the strength of their losses, average of their net, it's 36. That's better than most of the teams on this bubble right now. Only 2 teams better than that. And they have no losses below quad 2, which is very good for what we're seeing at the bottom of this list. And they just keep producing. If they can get a couple more wins, I think they can find a stable spot in the bracket this year.
And they got a chance. Iowa at Michigan, home to Purdue, and at Minnesota. They have a chance. But we do like their strength of schedule as them being in. Cade, who are you going to talk about here in the bubble?
Yeah, I'll talk about Oklahoma State, and you kind of just mentioned that they got whomped in their last game. But, they play in arguably one of the hardest conference in the country, and they've shown that they can take a couple of wins out of that conference as well. They won over Iowa State, TCU, and Oklahoma. So the ability to pick up a couple nice wins and keep their net solid at what it is right now at 37, I'm not sure that you can really drop them as far as out of the bracket because they were able to schedule tough enough in the non-conference, and they took care of those non-conference games that they scheduled. So showing that they won in Quad 1 and in one of the tougher conferences in the country, I think that gives them some street cred, and I think it keeps them in the bracket.
So here's some things about the teams on our list that are out. West Virginia is 16-12. The top 11 seed, and then Oklahoma State is 16-12 in the first 4 out, and Wisconsin is 15-11. Typically, you have to be 3 games above 500 or better to be selected. There's always chances for that to change, depending on that. These teams have some tough schedules coming down. I'm looking at Oklahoma State right now. They have Kansas State, number 14 in the country, Baylor, number 9 in the country, a 2 seed and a 3 seed at home. Oklahoma State's going to have to win 1 or 2 of those games, and then they go on the road to Texas Tech. Oklahoma State might have to win 2 out of 3 to be considered. For me, West Virginia's in the same boat. They won and beat Oklahoma State. We dropped them out, and then we put them back in. You're going to see, if you follow us, a lot of movement. But there's only 2 or 3 teams that are out. We'll get to that next that maybe could move in. So West Virginia's not in our first 4, but they have really good metrics at 32 net. So now we're looking at our first 4 out, and for us right now it's Mississippi State, Arizona State. We put Charleston, a small school who's having a great year, at 25-3, and then Utah State from out west. Those are our first 4 out. We also have Michigan, North Carolina, Texas Tech, Virginia Tech, Vanderbilt, Penn State, Seton Hall, and North Texas on a consideration list for moving in. Caden, what team there grabs your eye that could potentially make a move in?
Charleston catches my eye a lot with their 25 wins and their 3 losses. The only thing I'm worried about with them is their conference strength of the schedule is awful, and their non-conference strength of schedule is not good either. They haven't really played any quad 4 games, but they still.
I mean, quad 1?
Yeah, quad one games.
Yep.
They've played a lot of quad 4 games, 16-0 in quad 4. They haven't played very many quad 1 games, but if they can keep producing wins, I think they might have a chance to move up.
Yeah, I think they're going to have to win out. I would like to see a Charleston and North Texas get in instead of the last, mid-major team at 16-12 or whatever else. I think these teams play their schedules and they play them well, and they're dominant. And if they lose in their conference tournament, they're not going to get a chance to play in the NCAA tournament. So, there's quite a few. Oral Roberts is in that situation. We'll talk bid thieves next week when the conference tournament comes on. But Charleston doesn't have the resume to get in, but they have the overall record. It'll be interesting to see if this is a year where our fellow teacher, Steve Painter, wants a mid-major in. What team grabs your attention here on the bubble?
Yeah, I think that, the camera might have just saw me puzzling for maybe like 3 minutes sitting here trying to figure out what team that I would want in. And to me, it's really hard this year because, the Nets aren't necessarily good enough to be in the tournament. I mean, Utah State's at a 33 net, and that's what caught my eye originally. But then you see they're 0-4 in quad 1 with 2 quad 4 losses. So how are you supposed to? Yeah, how are you supposed to move a team into the bracket when they don't have any good wins? So, I mean, I would say that Mississippi State, for me, is the team that would move in. They're 4-4 on the road and 3-5 in quad 1. So they also don't have any losses outside of quad 2, which is another nice thing. But yeah, it's just a big coin toss with all these teams, but I think that Mississippi State would be the team to move up.
I'm picking North Texas. 21-5, 1-3 in quad 1, 2-0 in quad 2, 3-3, 500 record. They're playing Conference USA has moved up in the rankings as far as conference. They're like 8th or 9th. And so let's put North Texas in with the mid-major. All right, it's time for our games of the week. Lots of good basketball going on. Caden, we'll start with you.
My game of the week is going back to the bubble, New Mexico at Boise State. Both of them are in the bubble right now, and this might decide who's in and who's out later.
Cade, your game of the week.
My game of the week is Arkansas at Alabama. It's at 8 p.m. on Saturday. And for me, this game would be a huge win for Arkansas. It would move them up to, maybe the 6th seed line with that 19 net that they have. That we love to hate Arkansas, but since they have that 19 net, and being able to pick up this incredible win on the road against Alabama would be huge for them. And for Alabama, the last time they were, ranked pretty highly in the AP, they lost to Tennessee, but that was on the road. So we'll see if for Alabama the home court advantage helps them and if they can pull out a nice win against Arkansas.
We talked this morning about rooting for Arkansas to help make our decision-making easy because we thought 8-7. If they win, they're going to be on that 6 or 7 seed line. Hey, it's IU Purdue, round 2. Purdue has something to prove. They went into Bloomington and got beat. It's going to be a real tough atmosphere for the Indiana Hoosiers. If Indiana does win that, they could really push to move up into the 3 seed line. Purdue wants to win that in order to maintain their 1 seed line, but nothing's better in this state than an IU-Purdue rivalry, and we're glad that they play twice. And it should be a rocking Mackey Arena on Saturday. But that'll do it for this episode of the Bracket Report. Thanks to ISC Sports Network for hosting our show. Please contact us on Twitter at Delphi Brackets. Follow us at our website of DelphiBracketology.com for more. Also, shout out Coca-Cola Bottling for sponsoring us. We really appreciate it. I'm Brian Tonsoni for Cade Nelson and Caden Gasser. We thank you for watching, and may your favorite team win some games, win those quad 1 and 2, move up in the net, win them on the road, but just have fun watching college hoops.
Oh, baby! That got me awake! The worm has turned in Logansport. Look at that play. The lob underneath, and